My name is Tim Cross. I'm assistant editor at VideoWeek, and I'm going to be sort of moderating this CMO's guide to AI. But before we get into it, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Sumi, we'll start with you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I must say, this weather and how muggy it feels reminds me of many a heated, no pun intended, conversation I've had with Andrew here about some of the topics that we are here to discuss. I've had the privilege of working with Andrew for many years and knowing some of their products closely. So I couldn't be more excited to be here. I myself have been a CEO at a few different places, ran a few different businesses, including BBC, Amazon channels, and most recently at the Curate Retail Group. So I couldn't be more excited to be here with Andrew. I want to hear from him more than you want to hear from me.
Very excited to come in and argue with Sumi again. So I'm Andrew Grasso. I'm one of the co-founders of Pickaxe, and we help CEOs and CMOs prepare for AI without spending $1 million, without getting sacked right away. We're the folks you call after you've just had BCG and Accenture, and they've delivered you a wonderful deck, and it's time to now actually do it and get started on making something.
So just to kick off this session, some of the audience I'm sure will have seen as well. We've seen, I guess, a few examples of what goes wrong when an AI strategy perhaps isn't so well implemented. So Andrew, do you want to talk us through some of the examples you've seen?
Yeah, so we've prepped a few fun moments of really bad AI. Okay, so a couple of examples. This is when you search how to get your cheese not to stick to the pizza or to stick to it better. Literally, this came up, add an eighth cup of non-toxic glue. This is what happens when you feed things through Reddit. And use the Reddit library of content. There's a lot of fun stuff out there, and AI can't quite tell who's joking and who isn't. Okay, next one. Yeah, I'm sure we've all heard about this. Raise your hand, by the way, if you've seen any of these. So a lawyer who used ChatGPT in court, right? It cited a fake case that did not exist. He used that as precedent. He got in trouble. Next one. Oh, there was a chatbot at a car dealership and you could negotiate your price. Someone figured out that he could continue to negotiate the price down until he bought a car for $1 and then used the transcript of the conversation, took it to court, and actually it was considered a deal. This is a binding offer. Literally, this is what the AI said to him. That's a deal, and that's a legally binding offer, said the AI, with no takesies, backsies. And I think we've got one more. Oh, yeah. Obviously, and then, of course, there's sexism, racism, all sorts of troubles that you can get into using various tools. So this is Amazon. This was feeding the data with only male resumes or primarily male resumes. It then weeded out female candidates. So there's things that can go wrong here. Next one. Okay. And that's me. Oh, yeah. The important things on this is Instagram thinks I'm a lady runner. Taboola has me celebrating my birthday early. And I'm the person who does go in and checks individually each cookie. I always give the performance cookies credit. And I'm sorry, I don't do it for the targeting cookies. So
thank you very much, Andrew. So that's, I guess, what we're trying to avoid. But oh, there might be one more.
So this is about us.
We
were happy. The one thing I probably want you to look at this before he manages to skip is just the client list. Since we're talking here at the VideoWeek Villa, we work with a ton of streamers in the US, UK, internationally. So close to here, you know, in EMEA, you can see BritBox, Sky, BBC, ITV, Hey, which is the best of American culture, exported to the rest of the world. Marquee, which is the best of fine arts. Yeah. But then the next one, we've got a little, okay, so this is the C-suite technology adoption curve. This is actual usage of ChatGPT. And when it starts, there's a moment of, uh-oh, this new tech has come out. Do I need to pay attention to this? Followed by, uh-oh, everyone, adoption has skyrocketed. okay, we just need to say that we have a plan, right? People are asking us, we need to tell the board we have a plan. We need to tell the public. We need to do something at quarterly earnings. Somehow we have to say we have one. Oh, thank God it's dipped. Oh, crap, it's gone and skyrocketed. Well, now we really do need a plan. And then if you see the dip down, this is sort of current use. It's kind of gone back down and then it will go back up again. That's how these cycles go. Did anyone see the news today about NVIDIA taking up the way? Yeah, I see a lot of nods. The largest market cap in the world. That's not about current usage of AI. That's about the fact that these chips are going to power the next step, everything that happens next year and the year after. Folks are bullish. Even though I showed all the bad examples, there's a lot of good out there, and it's only going to get better and more efficient. And that's all my preamble.
Can I ask a question, Andrew, while you're at this? So what you're talking about here is, I'm going to call some form of ChatGPT or even rudimentary Gen AI. But there's other uses that are actually quite powerful today. Do you want to talk about a couple of them?
Yeah. So this is a good segue. So this is ChatGPT usage. And as Sumia said, that's large language models, right? And we actually will talk a little about just general decision science. So at Pickaxe, one of the things we do when we work with someone like Sumia or a CMO is we help get all of the data from all the different sources, your billing, your viewing, your engagement data, your programmatic, your spend elsewhere, put it all into one place, help normalize it, help it talk to each other, and then figure out what to do next. And often that's something really simple, right? So we're focusing on, maybe decision engines where you're making a recommendation or you're offering users, a couple of options. But that's sort of basic data science. And often the hardest part is the people and the process. And so I think that's one thing we can cover today is, as much as the technology is there, one of the hardest things is transforming your team and getting them ready.
So I guess, the first question for this CMO's guide, let's start from absolutely square one. If I'm the CMO coming to you saying, my board's told me I need an AI strategy and, we're looking at the adoption curve there, but I have no idea what even the first step of doing that is, where do you start?
So the very first thing is figuring out what are your core values for the data and your key use cases. And by that, I mean, there are a lot of companies that might want some sort of decision or recommendation engine, right? But it's going to be very different depending on what your business is. If you're doing currency trading, you want fractions of a second of arrival of data. If you're at BritBox and you're making a recommendation of the next mystery to watch, you don't care what's happened in the last 2 seconds or milliseconds, or even maybe the last hour or day, but you want to make sure that you're not recommending Midsummer Murders to someone that's interested in ghastly, current day topics.
So yeah, maybe we can look at some of the media and advertising specific use cases that you're kind of working on at the moment. What does this mean for media and advertising specifically? And how different is the process of forming an AI strategy for this industry compared with, because you work across a range of industries. So is there like stuff that's specific to the people in this audience, or is it actually the same sort of processes and logics that work across different industries?
Yeah. So in that example, those are both decision engines where they need they have two different key values, right? So we work with an energy customer that's doing optimization of when the battery should help the grid, and they need stuff in seconds. And that's a key value for them. And that's where it would be totally different than that BritBox example. But the fundamental thing that's the same for everyone is you need to understand your use cases. Like, what do you actually want to do with the data that's going to make the business more money? And that may be, do we want to find better lookalikes? Do we want to make sure we can exclude users from our advertising, right? And have your exclusion list be up to date, within seconds. I mean, that may be something really simple like CAPI, and it doesn't need, fancy decision science. But maybe you need, you want your marketing team to understand the LTV of a particular audience, right? You've spent a lot of money, you've bought them on programmatic. You're like, hey, we got our lookalikes, we got this new crew. Are those people coming in actually as valuable as you thought? Are you able to tell what the LTV of them is within, say, 30 days so that you can assess the value of the campaign? So those are the kind of use cases you need to think of, which are all the questions you ask in your meetings every week. If you have those questions written down and you know who's the user that's going to use it, right? Is it your head of programmatic? Is it your search team? And then what are the key data points they need? Now you know your use case, and you can say, as the head of search, I need to be able to automatically turn off the key brands that are syndicated elsewhere, where Amazon is swamping my bid, right? Sorry, bud. And so, yeah, so you've got to have that in, and you don't want to have someone doing this on weekends, taking a look manually. So you need to have that automated. So that would be a key use case for, say, search.
So, sorry, I'm gonna interject and talk about a couple of things, right? Like, some of this is you getting your data prepped in a manner that can go into a CDP or a DMP of some sort. However, what you do is apply intelligence on top of these to then power multiple use cases as outcomes. Is that fair? It's not necessarily a clean room, but it's using a CDP-like model.
Well, I think the clean room ethos actually has to apply to all of your data. So one of the great things about a clean room is you're trying to match data from your system to someone else's. And you've got to figure out, okay, well, what's our identifier? How are we joining? When you think of your own data and you think of your CRM data and your viewing data and your, performance media data, right? You need to know that lookalike group is tagged the same way. So if they're in your viewing table, you need to know who is in, who came from which campaign, right? So you've got to have clean labels that match across everywhere, and or what's called a schema, which is just a translation layer where you say all these business terms that we use in the room in your meetings every week, they have a definition, and it's an official definition that your team makes sure that when you use Braze and you're tagging a campaign, that's got that same definition. And then when you look at your, YouTube and you're looking at, YTMP, that label that comes in there actually is going to match up with It Says Mystery, that you know how to convert it to your own version of Mystery, et cetera. And that's literally the most simplest thing, and probably the hardest thing to do, is that data hygiene of making sure all your systems talk to each other and you know the translations between them.
And then you alluded to this earlier. So say, we figured out our strategy and we're kind of going about this data hygiene piece. But then also beyond that as well, you mentioned the role of talent. And so I want to ask, what does that mean for a company developing an AI strategy? Do you need to hire in new talent likely to do this stuff, maybe both in terms of the data hygiene side, but also then when it comes to knowing how to intelligently use whatever you build? Or is it a case of training up existing talent? You'll probably have the talent there on the team, but it's just learning new systems, new technologies to work with.
I think it's both. The key piece is culture, that you have to train your team and say, this is a process we're now going to follow, right? We're going to have, be sort of personal trainers for our own data. We're going to do the work. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have health checks, right? We used to create these things called impossible reports, which is data that shouldn't exist, right? You need to have those. They surface. You have to look every either day or week or hour, whatever cadence is appropriate, and find all these things that fall out and say, great, we're going to squash and clean them. So that's before you even figure out, your own team. And then in terms of skilling up, you need folks who are comfortable understanding the data and understanding the setup. Existing people can probably do lots of it. And then occasionally you may need outside talent.
I love this impossible data. Many moons ago, I'm going to date myself, but I was at Universal Studios, and we knew that every report had a Happy Gilmore at Musicland. How many of you even knew Musicland stores existed? Anybody? Suncoast, Sam Goody? There. So we knew that there was a data error, and every single time we'd have to go manually remove it. And I just tell you, these days, what you have created and what's possible was just impossible in those days. And I thought I was clever with my pivot tables, but enough, you mean?
I would assume everyone here has some story that goes something like this. We have, how do we know how many users have signed up for the service? Oh, well, that's easy. In programmatic, if you look before October 2023, you have to use the conversion event called Trade Desk Conversions 1. If it's after October 2023 and on mobile, then you use conversion 7. But if it's after then, right, and this exists, I see nods, a lot of this is just simple human intervention.
So I wanted to ask you just about kind of the rate of evolution of the kind of tools that businesses are going to be working with, because I think a lot of the excitement around AI the last few years has come from these consumer-facing generative AI tools, and we've seen those quickly become a lot more sophisticated, still not perfect, but becoming much more smart in what they can do. At the same time, in this industry, what we've seen is a lot of technologies have used AI in some form for a long time now, and maybe those products are putting AI a bit more prominently in their marketing at the moment. But those more sort of behind the scenes AI powered tools that aren't sexy generative AI things, but are AI powered. Are we seeing sort of similar rates of evolution and development for those tools? Are they also kind of progressing at a really fast rate? And dynamic creative optimization, what you might have been able to do there 5 years ago, actually there has been tons of evolution there.
Well, I think within the networks, you're seeing this, and it's not always advertised when they've changed the models, how they've improved. But one thing we say is OPP, other people's products, their AI at, say, YouTube is going to be better than your own in terms of targeting a particular audience or user, right? YTMP is a great example. If we think of Meta, we had a client who said, you know what, actually, I'm spending less when I don't use my lookalikes, and I just let Meta figure it out. As long as I can gift them via CAPI, I'm actually saving money. The LTV is a little bit lower, but it's not enough to make up for the difference in CPA. So that's one thing, is adoption of other people's tools, not worrying about it. And I think the other thing is an editor mindset. So when you think of generative AI, we have someone who uses it to do log lines for all of their content, right? They have it listen, it goes through, they have a ton of short form, and it just generates the one sentence descriptions. They know that that's like 85, 90% right, but that they have to have an editor go through each time and just make sure there's no bad words. It didn't make up something that doesn't happen in the episode, right? And so it's just allowing that part of your role is going to be editing. You put in a prompt, you're going to have to do a thing again when it comes back, and maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times, right? But that's just part of the talent training and the way you have to think of these tools.
So building upon that, I happened to be on the Quasset this morning and walked into the YouTube booth. We're supposed to go for a meeting, but ended up taking a demo. And this is, what Andrew's talking about is so apropos, because they showed us this tool for YouTube Shorts creators where you can essentially use true language to say, create this background for me. So we're all sitting behind this thing that says VideoWeek. They were like, creator, here's a green screen. And we typed in a dog and a lizard or a can on a yacht at sunset. Guess what? The input forgot to say a lizard. So it did not show us the lizard. And we kept looking for the lizard everywhere. And all it was input error. So to Andrew's point, it's so important to know what it is that you're asking it. And how do you check for that? And how do you check for that at scale?
You've just got to get used to it. So there's one thing. One, you have to train people to do it. But then to actually technologically scale it, you've got to have your own data in a set. So the term for this is RAG, right? And so this is this idea of you take your own data and you use it as a prompt. You're augmenting, that's the A in the RAG. We used to joke about RAG against the machine, but it's really RAG with. You want to feed the machine and all the AI with your cleaned set of data, right? This is how we think about our content. In that case of the log lines, these are examples that we have used that we approve of, right? Think of these as suitable titles and log lines. And then you put that in, and now when you ask, the LLM, the large language model, to write new ones for the new 1,000 pieces of content you've given it, it's going to be much better. It will go from, say, 70% to now, say, 90%, but you still have to have someone go through every single line and just double check.
So I just want to hit you with a couple more questions that I imagine might be the kinds of questions you get, if you're speaking to a CMO, for example. One is, we started this session with some examples of really high profile mistakes and mistakes made by companies that presumably know a couple of things about AI. So is that kind of an inherent risk if you're using AI tools, that there's always going to be some risk that you have some high profile mistake? Or, the examples that we've seen was that either the implementation by the tech company wasn't that great and well thought through, or the use case from the sort of end user, wasn't really appropriate and they hadn't thought through what they were asking it to do, or were relying on it too much when they shouldn't have been.
Well, so all of these technologies, right? LLMs, generative AI, or the decision engines, it's all just predictions. It's always going to be wrong a little bit. And so one of the things that you have to do is, if you think of any good TV pundit, when they make the prediction, they'll couch and they'll say two things at once. You have to sort of couch and know, hey, we're going to make this many. If you want to label it as generated with AI, or you have to know internally, hey, we're either having someone look at all of this, or we're going to take the risk, and we've decided that's acceptable.
And then another question that comes up quite a lot, and I've heard a few different answers on this, is if you're investing in AI tools, does that ultimately mean that probably you're going to be laying off some of your workers further down the line because you're going to be replacing them? I've heard, I think Mark Reed at WPP said, no, it won't. We'll see, AI just augments what people are doing. I think Sorrell, we've had him over, always says that we're going to see massive cuts on the media buying side of things. And there'll be that augmentation of some roles, but a lot will go. From kind of the companies you're working with, are they signing up to ultimately cut out some workers, or is it not that simple?
So my inner people pleaser wants to say, similar to your first point of, yeah, you're not, replacing workers. They're all going to have to train up, and they're just going to learn, and it's going to replace tasks, and we're all going to get smarter and more efficient. But if you look at history, there is no massive technological change that has not disrupted some things. There used to be a different process for buying ads directly that involved a lot of calling up and people whose job was to say, you can have it at this time on the TV schedule, and here, I'll take you to a 3-martini lunch. Those things have all changed. So I don't think there's any way this doesn't change things.
So I have to add to this. So Andrew may or may not remember this, but he worked with me on a segment cohort mapping using k-means clustering. I say this to say, back in the day, we used to think the number of people I'm going to need to program to these unique cohorts of people that I want to make sure that I'm reaching uniquely. And voila, it took Andrew and his team, 2 days to spin up something that I didn't need 7 more people to speak to those cohorts. Spat it out. So this happened now, at least 4 years ago?
It was showing it wasn't as much about genre, it was about time of day and day of week that they watched. Yeah, there was a group of weeknight viewers, and they never watched on the weekend. And there was a group of weekend viewers, and they never watched during the week. And it was okay. There was another group where it was okay if they went away for a month and you didn't need to panic.
This was happening already. So imagine at the speed at which, and that was just rudimentary k-means. It's nothing. And with the tools that are available today that you're working at, I don't see any way that, I think Martin Sorrell's point was right, where Sarah Martin said, what did he say? We're going to all have longer holidays. I like that. I'll take the longer holidays.
Well, that's a positive note to end on. That is all we have time for. Hopefully that's been really useful as a CMO's guide to AI. So please join me in thanking both my speakers. Thank you very much.